On Thursday night's edition of Hannity,
I got this old 36 Grunow Teledial. What model is this thing? I'm not really sure. Anyway, it's printed inside the cabinet. But anyway, it's acting up. These buttons or knobs are getting really touchy. And when I have a station in tune, it just cuts out or it just starts making a loud humming noise. So I believe the chassis is in fine condition, but the switches themselves are probably a little dirty. So we're going to pull the chassis out of this thing and bring it downstairs and have a look at it. So to do that, I've got to turn the thing sideways. And okay, we got the chassis out. That was easy. Now we need to identify the problem. Which I already know what the problem is. The switches themselves are probably badly worn. We're going to take a close look and see how salvageable they might be. This radio. There's a long story behind this one. The story is, my old pal John Bachman. I've mentioned him many times over the years on this channel. This was a project that he worked on many years ago, probably around 2007 or so, 2007, 2008, and this was the last radio he ever restored. John Bachman was the owner of a company called Anatech Corporation, which is now based out of California. I think they're still around, making the blue ESR meters and ring testers. Well, it was John's company, and I worked for him. And when I started working for him in 2007, this was sitting in his shop. And he was in the process of restoring this chassis. And he ran into a lot of issues restoring this one. And he ended up having to enlist the help of one of his friends, Sherman Wolf, to identify and rectify the problem. I guess it had some bad tuning coils. You can see they're marked. I believe that's resistance. I'm not really sure exactly. I'm not much of a radio guy. But I do appreciate how these old systems are put together, and I admire them really quite a bit, actually. So anyway, John and Sherman had been working on this set for a while, and they finally got it right. And Sherman Wolf, he was a well-known Ferrari collector. In fact, if you Google his name, Sherman Wolf Ferrari, you will find I think it's Gooding Auctions. You'll find the listing of all the cars he had sold or his estate had sold. See, both gentlemen are now deceased. Sherman passed away of natural causes, and John was killed by a texting teenage driver. So it's a very, very sad time when they both passed away within a year of each other. But anyway, this radio came to me because John's widow, she didn't really have a use for it. I mean, it was something that she didn't really have the same appreciation for as I know I did, or she knew I would. So she thought I should have it, so she gave it to me, and here it is. So all I've done to this radio is I completed a few things. I made some chassis grommets that fit inside the inside the cabinet to get it to the right height. And I cleaned it up a little bit, and I did some minor repairs to the cabinet, but I haven't really done much. It is missing the bottom cover. There should be a metal cover on the bottom of this whole chassis, and that, unfortunately, is long gone. So, that sucks. But let's get a good look at, let me get some more light on here. So we do know that, so this is our tuning dial, and this one is I believe this is our band selector. This is our on-off volume, and that's fine. And this one here adjusts the, I believe this is audio quality or audio. Yeah, see, I think some of those Yeah, those are pretty dirty. Let's see if we can clean them up with alcohol first, and then I'm going to get some deoxit. Actually, I'm just going to spray the deoxit on there. We're going to clean them up. We're going to start with this one and see what happens. This is a cleaner and lubricant for control contacts. It says no residue, but oh no, this is not the residue reducing one. Let's see. This is a medical grade swab. Now I believe he already cleaned these contacts, but actually let's do some of this stuff here. Get all those contacts cleaned up. And then this stuff smells awful. Okay, we got some over here. Got some over here. This is supposed to remove oxidization, but you can clearly see how there may be some reliability issues with these rotary switches. I mean, it's pretty obvious. This one here feels especially muddy. You can see that yeah, this side too. I mean, this thing's getting up there in age, so it's gonna have some weirdness. But when John restored this unit, he didn't really, I don't think he ever really had a chance to do any fine-tuning, so to speak. He got it running again, and he passed away before he could ever really finish. So I don't know. I have no way of knowing other than just analyzing its functionality. I have no way of really knowing where he left off. You can't just say, hey, by the way, you know, I forgot to do this, or I was waiting to do this or that, but I never got to it, and then I got hit by a truck. No, it wasn't like that. Here's the detent, and you can see that could stand some lubrication and cleaning. So I'm going to grab the my little swab here, and you can see there's a lot of schmutz there. And we're going to take some, I've got the cleaner lubricant, and we're going to spray some of that right there. Kind of smooth it out a little bit. A little better. Yeah, it's still a little sticky. Stuff comes out freezing, and it kind of bothers me because that attracts moisture, having it so cold. But yeah, that's all the way, all the way. You can see the little fingers moving. A lot of them. I'm going to do my best to clean these up a little better. I'm gonna grab a different spray, I think, and see if I can get some better results there. So this one I was able to clean up with some steel wool wrapped around a stick, just like quadruple zero, which you got to make sure that you you're thorough about not allowing any steel wool bits to exist in the mix, because that could short things out, and we don't want that to happen. It's probably not the right thing to do, but well, you know, I'm just brainstorming here. Give me a little break. I can't clean these contacts thoroughly because, well, I could if I took the switches out and carefully went in there and took some maybe emery board or something. But I did what I can. Now this one here, I mean, we can clean the wipers, but not the contacts that the wipers contact. You know what I'm saying? And the wipers look pretty clean. You can see there's a very complex set of switches. This is what changes the band. This is our band selector. It'll go from police to broadcast to foreign or shortwave. And yeah, those contacts look pretty clean inside there. And now that they're lubricated, they do move a little bit nicer. Yeah. You can see there's some lubricant sprayed everywhere. That should not affect anything. I believe it's dielectric. At least it better be. What I do find frustrating about this particular selector is that the detents are a little bit muddy. In other words, it can be held in a variety of positions. It should only be 3 positions, not 5. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's like 5 positions. Although that's not correct. It is only a 3-position switch. But the detents are what they are. They're muddy. Well, you know what it is? I'm getting some false detents, likely from the switches themselves. Yeah. But yeah, I am missing a bracket that goes here that keeps all this in line. I would love to find, if anybody has a Grunow kicking around for parts, please let me know. I'm also missing about half, I believe 4 dial screws. They're a very specialty screw. They're a brass screw that is almost an oval head, but it's a very unique screw. I've never seen them anywhere else. I've got 4 of them, but I need 8. I need a couple more. I'm going to spray some lubricant. Not that that's going to do me any good. Yeah, I don't need that. But I did spray all of these, so now they move a little bit smoother. And that contact wheel should be a little bit smoother as well. We'll see how long this lubricant lasts. This is not the best of stuff, but it is what it is. It's probably not the right thing to use. But yeah, it should be okay. I think we've licked it. I think we've found the problem and we've isolated and fixed and done what we can. But yeah, that whole thing is worn pretty bad. It is worn. This thing is it's seen some use. But anywho, let's take a look at what he's done. So we've got we got all new caps here. A lot of new caps. All of them. All of them have been replaced. And what's this one here? Looks like a contact for something. But what is it for? Looks like it should tie into the band selector switch. I'll have to check into that. Yeah, it looks like it's supposed to link to something. Hold on. Okay, so here we are. So what this is part of the teledial system. When you roll the dial over with the preset pushed in, I believe what it does is it disengages the audio. I'm not really sure. I really don't know. But it hits a reed switch for some reason. Let me show you how that teledial system works. It's actually kind of interesting. Very gimmicky, but it's interesting nonetheless. So what this does is it has these preset locations positioned all around the dial. And they're essentially preset dial stops. And what you do, let's say you have a station that's, let's say WEAF. And what you do is you press the button in, and it stops the dial, boom, like that. And let's say that's AM 180. So AM 180, or 1800. What that's going to do is it'll just make it quicker to pick out a station that you've already preset. Now what you do to change these is you pull these out, you pull the dial cover off, you pull these out, and you can reposition them to stop at a different point within a certain range, within, I believe, a 1,000 kilohertz range, if I'm not mistaken. So WEEI, boom, it stops there. Or I can get to it from on this side of the dial and just stops right there. If I want to relocate it, or if I want to change the position of where it stops, I just pull it out and I rotate it. There's black and red ones, depending on what range, up or down. It's very interesting how it works. I'm just not really good at explaining anything. That's very typical of me. But what I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know, is how it works electronically or electrically. If it somehow changes the way the radio tunes in stations by adjusting the receiver in any way, shape, or form. I don't know how that is affected. But this is supposed to be a floating tuner. At least it was, but the grommets are long gone. I should probably find some new ones. If anybody has any resources for restoring an old Grunow, I've looked on the web, but I found very little. I would love to find that chassis cover for the bottom. I would love to find the exact style of grommets that I'm supposed to buy for this thing, because I think it deserves it. It's a good running unit. Somebody put a lot of love into it, that being John. He put a lot of love and attention into restoring it many years ago. Although he did not do any cosmetic work. I think that's fairly obvious. There was no real cosmetic work done to this unit, which I don't blame him. I mean, I think the heavily patinaed look is certainly something to strive for as well. So, dial's in pretty good shape, though it is starting to crack a little bit here and here, but it's ultimately in great condition. It's probably made of probably celluloid. There's probably a lot of celluloid on this thing. But I would love to find some new grommets for that chassis deck. I mean, for the tuning deck. Maybe pull the transformer off and give it a spray paint job or something. But you know what? The patinaed look is certainly nice on a radio like this. I think it gives it some character. Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to put this back in, and we're going to give it a try. See if it tunes in a little better. These are the two that I was more worried about because they just were not. They were not holding. You just touch it and it would go out. You'd lose audio. So there's definitely some issues there. I just had to make one very minor repair to one of the vacuum tubes of all things. This one right here, there's a name for these and I don't know what that is, so refresh me. And I'm I'm not an electrical engineer. But there's a name for those caps that are on the tops of these tubes that connect to these wires, and they do something. I don't know what the hell they do, but this one was detached from the wire that goes down into the vacuum tube, so I had to resolder it. And it's I don't want to mess with it too much. I couldn't find any adhesive to glue it down, anything like that. So it's just setting on there. The tube itself is an RCA 6K7G. So I probably should just get a replacement just to have on hand. But the rest of these are fine. I've been cleaning the tubes, just taking them out and cleaning them up, putting them back in. Probably shouldn't do that because just handling the tubes is enough to sometimes, well, if they're marginal and they're ready to go, I could potentially finish them off. But I want to point something out too. Now, if you watched, and I'm going back to a video series that has been in the books for a long time by another fellow YouTuber, a gentleman named B. Anderson TV, Bob Anderson. Bob Anderson restored the chassis on my Philco 37640. It's a radio that is about a year newer than this one. And he restored the chassis for me as a favor and really only charged me for parts. But what he did, so these giant metal capacitors, these are electrolytic capacitors. They were once filled with a liquid electrolyte. And over time, they would develop leaks, and the electrolyte would leak out and cause massive corrosion all over the chassis. And I don't think they were completely filled with liquid, but they did have a liquid electrolyte in them. And what would happen is they would leak, and cause corrosion, and they generally failed completely after about maybe 30 years of use or so. So finding original ones that are still good is basically impossible unless they're new old stock, and even then I don't know if I would trust them. So what Bob Anderson did for me for the Philco is he actually took them apart. He basically opened them up like a can, just cut them around here, around the edge of the cap, and he would pull the contents out of the canister and stuff a modern electrolytic capacitor of the same capacitance is only a fraction of the size of it. It looks something like, let's see if we can find one. Yeah, here's one. So it looks something like, let's see if we can find the replacement. Here it is. Looks like that. So what you can do is you can cut these apart and repack them with a modern capacitor using, shrink tubing and all the nice ways to prevent short circuits. You can do that to keep the original look of the chassis. There are two ways to do that. Number one is to do exactly what I described. You can pull the thing apart and pop in a new capacitor. And the second way to do it is to simply bypass it altogether, leaving it there and bypass it. And you can throw a capacitor in line with where it once was. That's what John did. So John added a capacitor here. That just takes the function of this electrolyte. He did that, or electrolytic. He did that here and here. This one you can see has leaked profusely. And that one was bypassed, and here's the bypass capacitor. There's a few more. There's those two. And there's some down here on the bottom end. There's that one. Now this one, he rerouted the wiring. I think it goes here now. And then, where's the other one? Yeah, that one goes there. Oh, you know what John did? I think he actually took two of them and combined them into one somehow. I don't know how he did that. John was a well-educated man. He was an electrical engineer by trade. So whatever he did, he knew what he was doing, and I'm not here to question any of that. But this is what he did. He just basically routed the leads elsewhere and ran his own caps. But what Bob Anderson did is he restuffed the electrolytic cans. Now, one of the things I can say for Bob's method is what Bob did removed the contents of these cans. So if there are any corrosive materials left in them, they're gone. What John did didn't do that. So inside these cans, if I were to pull these apart, you would find a coil of metal, zinc maybe? I don't know what they used. But you would find a tightly wound coil of metal. Two coils. I believe there's two coils, and an electrolyte would go in between like a battery. I'm pretty sure that's how they work. Don't quote me on that. But anyway. So that's just another way of doing it. Both methods are completely legitimate, but one has the benefit of removing any corrosive substances that may still be in there. The other method is, both methods preserve the look. What you don't want to do is cut these off expecting to find replacements, because you won't. And it is important on an antique radio to keep the original aesthetic of the internals. People are expecting that when they're collecting and buying and selling these units, and that's what you should probably try to do. So I have only restored one radio chassis in my life, and it was a General Electric table radio, like the kind you would have at the breakfast table. And it was a 1951 model, I believe. Anyway, so I basically just replaced every capacitor on the chassis, and boom, it worked. And I didn't need to do any further troubleshooting. Worked perfectly. But there was a time when the average consumer was expected to make minor repairs to their radios, their televisions, their vacuum tube, electronic organs, and such. Their home electronics. Repairs were generally considered not outside of the scope of the average human being. There were schematics widely available, parts were available, and you could go to your local grocery store and they would have a display of all different popular tubes for the most popular sets of the time period, and there was a built-in tester. So what you would do is the average person would just go into their radio and start rooting around and, oh, I think that tube is bad because it's not lighting up. So you take the tube and you bring it to the testing machine at your local grocery store, Grand Union, Kroger, or whatever you call it, Dinwixie, whatever your grocery store was, you probably had one of these machines, or even Radio Shack. And they would actually, you just plug the thing into the machine, you'd self-service, plug it in, and it would test the tube for you. Well, there's a secret to those machines, and that is that they would fail almost any tube you would put in there. So you would end up buying a new tube, bringing it home, putting it in your set, and oh crap, it doesn't work. Because the problem was never that tube in the first place. The problem was something else. It could have been a capacitor, could have been a resistor, could have been anything, could have been a faulty switch. Or it could have been working fine, but you couldn't get your favorite radio station because they just built a new microwave antenna right next to your house and you didn't correlate the two. The point is, these machines' sole purpose was to sell you vacuum tubes that you didn't need in the first place. And that's why I believe, and I heard this from a few other people, but that's why often you find these sets that have a variety of tubes. We've got a Seeberg tube here, we've got a Philco there, a couple of RCAs, we've got, just a whole smattering of replacement tubes in this machine. Only one of them may even be original, and I think it's this one here. I'm not really sure though. I don't think Grunow had their own branded tubes. This one's a Crosley. This one's a Philco. That one, I don't know. Oh, what is that? That one is a GE. There's a National Union, an RCA. We've got that one, another RCA, So this one might have had RCA tubes originally. But again, you got a whole variety of tubes from a variety of different sources. And the chances are somebody tried to diagnose this back in the 50s and they gave up, threw it in the attic, when all along it was leaking electrolytics. That sort of thing happened, and those machines did nothing but sell you tubes you didn't need in the first place. So, let's bring it upstairs and see what happens. Okay, let's see how my handiwork turned out.
New York's only 24-hour source for breaking business news and market-moving headlines. Bloomberg.
A little bit of noisiness in the volume.
News update.
House Democrats may pursue 3 articles of impeachment against President, including abuse of obstruction of justice and bribery. More from correspondent Manu Raju.
The House Intelligence Committee and 2 other committees will detail the findings of this investigation that has been happening since late September. That report will be worked on.
There's a little bit of
and it will ultimately serve
a little bit of wonkiness with the volume control. A little bit of what am I saying? Static.
Signing bipartisan legislation supporting.
But that's nothing. I'm not worried about that.
Tries to work out a trade deal with China. The measure was passed this past week
right.
in reaction to the anti-government protests in Hong Kong that has stretched over more than 5 months.
Worked.
Amazon has filed a lawsuit. Bloomberg News reports a challenge.
Now the Teledial system. Yeah, you're going to see some cosmetic flaws in the cabinet in just a second here. Notice how the wood is losing its tone in some areas. I'm going to lightly sand the veneer by hand and add some toner, wood toner to it, or whatever the preferred method of treatment is, and give it a nice refinish. I think it would do it justice. And then give it some lacquer, spray lacquer. Thinking about it, haven't really figured out how I'm going to do it yet, but that's why I haven't touched it. But I do plan on doing something to address the cosmetic issues in the veneer. This isn't an antique Chickering table or anything. This is just, or Chickering, or whoever the big famous, Ethan Allen, whatever. It's not that. It's an old radio, and it should look nice. Teledial system. When you press any of these buttons in, that reed switch we were wondering about earlier, well, that's what it is. It disengages the audio output while you're tuning the station in. So you press the button in, roll the dial, boom,
For 14
release
to
it.
16 months to teach them basic skills.
The sound should come back. And then you can fine tune a little bit here. I think this one is a local rock station. Yeah. Notice all of these Gonzo stations. They've been gone for many, many years. Actually, WHDH is still in business. And I think WBZ. WBZ and WHDH are the only two that I know of that are left. Is it? Yeah. It's getting stuck on the light wire when I roll it over all the way. Now that wire right there, that's going into the dial, you see it? And it's kind of getting in the way. Now I just fixed a problem that it was actually kind of ongoing, but I didn't know what it was. This tube right here, which is now warming up, this tube was loose in the socket. Just a little bit. And I don't know what that tube is for. I don't have a schematic again, but it was causing a really annoying buzzing sound in the audio amplifier stage. But that went away as soon as I reseated that tube. It took it out, put it back in again. So, thank God for that.
Later, but
there is a local AM station that does nothing but broadcast oldies, and they throw in some newer stuff from the 80s as well. It's a really cool station. I actually listen to it all the time. They play all good stuff over the AM band, and that's what I listen to with this radio, that one, and I have one at work. It's good for when you're having family functions, family events. Everyone's at the house, and you want to play something that anyone can listen to and enjoy, and that's the station I put on. But let's fine tune here. I should be able to find a news station. Now this radio, I'm going to put it back where it belongs here. So here's the radio when the lid is closed. This is classic Art Deco. This is mid-30s Art Deco. I just love this cabinet. It is so beautiful. And typical of Art Deco, it does have a lot of flat surfaces, nice curved centerpiece here, and it emphasizes. And I think Art Deco is all about emphasizing vertical or height. I don't know why I think that. I'm not an art historian, and I would be the wrong person to describe what Art Deco is and what it means. But that's what I see. Anyway, just a beautiful piece. It's a survivor, for sure. The ionosphere is not paying me, not doing me any favors tonight. Although I was getting a New York news station.
Any other numbers you can come up with,
think that's-
Ryan, some number gymnastics? We've gone to the 33rd parallel. We know that Kennedy was killed on an ancient
Sounds pretty good now.
magical, it's called toponymy.
Tone adjustment here.
Giving sacredness to certain areas of the planet.
Yeah, everything's working
Parallel is a very, very important line.
without any hesitation,
For people who are opposed to
without any issues.
Tell us more.
It's working pretty nice. Let me tune in my rock station real quick and then I'll shut her off.
Sure, I hear very carefully in your rest.
So that's the Grunow. Now I do need to do a couple of things. I need to build a proper AM loop antenna. I just have a piece of wire coming out the back terminal. That's all I've got. I will be making a nice AM loop antenna. I got to look up some instructions on how to do that properly. And I'm going to do something with the finish on this. If anybody has any ideas, I do not want to screw this up. Now my thought was, now I've refinished a few things over the years and not very well. My thought was to do a light sanding by hand on the cabinet. Take everything out of it, take the grill off. I'm going to redo the grill cloth. That isn't done. I think after he did, see, John had recovered the grill. And after he had done it, I think it had shrunk. So I'm going to find some better grill cloth. I'm going to try to find something a little bit more historically accurate. But I'm going to take that off, redo that, and I want to refinish the cabinet, but I'm not sure what steps I need to take. If anybody has any ideas, some suggestions you want to throw my way, I would love to hear them. I'm thinking of a light sanding, and then a little bit of stain on a rag, mahogany stain. I'm going to try to, well, maybe I'll get a more accurate match, but lightly stain the whole thing to bring the color back, and then spray it with lacquer, clear lacquer, and to bring the finish back to life. If anyone has any ideas or things not to do, let me know. And I was going to sand it by hand, not with a power sander. I'm aware of that, but I do want to bring it back to life. It's a beautiful radio, and I want it to stay that way. The other thing is, if any of you have any Grunow parts kicking around, I need it. Like I said, that bottom cover for the chassis, but I want to get these screws. Now, these are an unusual screw. If you look at it's like a very early Phillips head screw, and I would like to find more of those. I need 4 exactly. I need 1, 2, actually 1, 2. I only need 2. Okay, I thought I needed more than that. So I guess I'm only missing 2 of them. Well, ain't that a peach? Okay, well, that's good. I thought I was in worse shape than I am. So yeah, I need a couple of those, and I need some advice on what to do with this cabinet. I mean, I think John's plan was to do something with it, but you can see it got some moisture damage. This was sitting in an unheated workshop for many years, and it got subject to temperature fluctuations, humidity, and it did a number on this. I need some advice. I don't want to screw it up. And yeah, and also some veneer at the very bottom. I need to cut out this section of veneer and replace that. That was painted black or stained black, but it's coming off, so I got to get my iron and iron it off and redo it. But these are all things that are fixable, and I think it's well worth fixing. Now that I got the chassis sorted out, for the most part, to my taste, I'm happy about that. Now it's time to work on the cabinet. So I found another problem with this unit, and it was very easy to fix, at least temporarily. So what was happening was, in addition to the weirdness with the rotary switches, the unit would emit a buzzing sound occasionally. The audio would drop out, and it was just inconsistent. It was also doing this whether the volume was down all the way or up all the way, or somewhere between. And I found that by wiggling one of these 6L6 tubes, these are two power tubes back here, if I touched one of them or wiggled it a little bit, the symptoms would go away. Well, there are two of them side by side, and I'm not sure where in the schematic they function, but I assume they're part of the amplifier stage. So what I did was I just took them out. I cleaned the contacts with deoxid on both the sockets and the tubes themselves. And then I decided, well, what if I switch them? They're both 6L6s, so I just reversed them. The problem completely went away. The unit runs perfectly fine. Consistently. Not only that, but it sounds better than it ever has as long as I've been listening to it.
And then further south at 96th Street, the accident's gone, and the other accident at 34th Street.
Still a slight hum, but that's, I think that's pretty much par for the course here.
Into the postseason, the Giants with no shot at the postseason.
Sounds fantastic now. Well, as good as you're going to get for an 80-some-year-old radio, but it's pretty good. There is a music station that I can't play to demonstrate because obviously copyright, but you can definitely get the full effect when you're listening to a broadcast radio station that plays music. But the sound that this thing produces is incredibly rich. Incredibly rich. In fact, it's exactly what I would expect from a tube amplifier. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick up another 6L6. See, this one here, it radiates a lot of heat. But this one here, ooh, now they're both hot. So before, this tube here was running kind of cool. It wouldn't generate a lot of heat, but now they're both heating up pretty nicely. So I think that was the problem. It's possible that they might be wired internally a little differently because they're both 6L6 tubes, but one of them has more digits before and after. So it's possible that they were in the wrong spot to begin with. But what does it say on the tube diagram? I know there's one in here somewhere. See, now it's starting to smell like a proper tube set. It's getting kind of warm in there. I just can't find the tube layout. It's printed somewhere, I thought. I think this might be the tag here. But anyway, is it down there? I could have sworn this one had the... You know what? It's my Philco. Yeah, my Philco has the tube layout printed on the cabinet, but this one is missing that. But I can feel some good heat coming off of this sucker right now. So I think we're good. But just to be on the safe side, I should pick up a couple of NOS 6L6s because they seem to be quite critical to the functionality of the set. Fun, fun, fun. Another thing I believe to be the case is this tone selector, standard and dial. I believe when you're on the dial side, it actually helps find stations. When you're on standard, the tuning is a little more finicky.
You don't need to get a second job as a stuntman to save money. You just need feedthepig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at feedthepig.org.
This thing sounds
By the American
fantastic.
CPAs and the Ad Council.
Solid gold hits, straight from the gold mine.
Very nice. Befitting of a mid-30s radio. Totally.
Who's a pretty boy? Yeah, that's right. That's you, Oreo. You're a pretty boy. So pretty.